chair recognizes the honourable member for St. Anne's.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'm going to start off, Madam Speaker, by doing what a number of my colleagues have already done, and that is extending thanks and gratitude to those that have served their country in years gone by, whether in public office, in private business, in charitable organizations, as school teachers, principals, within our military armed forces, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, the Royal Bahamas Police Force, and the Department of Corrections. They have all done an excellent job in bringing us to where we stand today, 50 years in, as an independent nation. We have very much to be proud about, Madam Speaker, and we must hold on to the great things that have been accomplished in our schools, in our offices, in our families, and in our nation as a whole. No matter which side of the political divide you've been associated with, you have contributed tremendously to the Bahamas as we find ourselves here today. Madam Speaker, there have been some deaths in my constituency since we last were in the House and I had an opportunity to be on my feet. I would like now to extend condolences to the family of Helen Thompson, to the family of Adelie Marie Wisa, to the family of the late Gail Saunders, whose brother Terry North lives in the St. Anne's constituency. To the family of Samantha Burrows, her father Burrows, the family of George Knowles, and the family of the late Christopher Mortimer. I believe words had been mentioned and shared here about Christopher's time, but he was a friend and colleague of mine. He was a very kind man, and he followed his dreams not only in business ventures but also in political life, having served as the deputy leader of the DNA for a number of years. He will be deeply missed not only by his immediate family but by his extended family, Madam Speaker, and also by those persons that had known him and considered him their friend, like myself. Madam Speaker, there's always a good and a bad. There's always good news and there's always bad news. Madam Speaker, some good news that I wish to share would stem from the recent 50th Jubilee honors, as well as the national honors. I'd like to extend congratulations to the family of Mrs. Leah Doris Farquharson Cunningham, who was recently recognized in the national honors, constituents of St. Anne's, and a mutual friend of myself and the member for Fort Charlotte, Mr. Doyle Burrows. There were, I think, 300 persons recognized in the national honors, Madam Speaker, all of them most deserving of the recognition that they received based on the sacrifice and commitment and contribution to nation building that they have given in their time. As I said, Madam Speaker, there's always good news and there's bad news. We just had independence celebrations. That was good news, great news. The event was awesome at Clifford Park, and the beat retreat and events leading up to it were also enjoyed by many. But Madam Speaker, we're 2 days past our independence. And when I wake up in the morning, I look at the newspaper. And the newspaper this morning, Madam Speaker, as the member for Centerville said, told me about an 82-year-old woman whose home was broken into and who was assaulted. Now, Centerville spoke to that already, the proximity of the lady's house to one of his family members. But this is an 82-year-old woman. And it's not just a situation where we have to, as a nation, respect women, because I think for the most part, the great majority of the country, men and women, both respect the women of our nation. What startled me, Madam Speaker, and where we need to make a change as legislators is that the individual now in custody is known to police, and he's known for having committed these types of offenses before. Madam Speaker, how is it that we can have an individual back on the streets when they're known for these types of offenses? Now it's all under investigation, so this doesn't have to be the specific case from my point. It can be any hypothetical case, but you have to think now, Madam Speaker, of what are we as legislators going to do for the country. We're not in the pulpit where we can cast out this type of action as evil and call on God alone to resolve it. We have to make a change to our laws, Madam Speaker. That is my opinion. You've seen instances in the U.S. where you have 3 strikes and you're out. That was a law that was changed. I think it eventually was changed again, so it was no longer the mandatory maximum life sentence had you committed 3 felonies. But if you have an individual that commits 3 felonies, we can definitely debate whether those, or 3 serious types of offenses, and I think assaulting a woman fits that category, Madam Speaker. If you have 3 serious offenses, we can debate whether that individual should remain in custody for the rest of their lifetime. 3 strikes and you're out. Your freedom to be back in society is done. Or we can debate it along the lines of 3 strikes, and when you're out, the public knows that you're out. The public is on notice. They're aware they can take precautions. That individual by that time would have sacrificed their rights to such an extent that the rights of the public outweigh their rights to personal privacy. They may be out on the street, they may or may not be rehabilitated, but they're not going to creep up on an 82-year-old woman that I love, because whether that individual is still mentally capable of defending themselves, protecting themselves, I'll take actions and I'll intervene and I'll make sure that the individual does not interfere with my loved one. Make sure that home is secure. Make sure that there's somebody in the house with the individual. Provide a deterrence, Madam Speaker, not just freedom. Freedom for a convicted repeat offender takes away the freedom of the well-behaved, law-abiding citizen. 3 strikes, you're out. The public knows what you're all about. Madam Speaker, I'm going to move now to the news that I read on social media this morning, and that was something that no one has spoken about yet, but there were 2 homicides for the morning. 2 days after independence, the people are waking up to 2 homicides, one on Meadow Street and the other on Blue Hill Road, south of Cowpen Road. I don't ever want to adjust to where that doesn't startle me, where that doesn't irritate me, where that doesn't anger me, where that doesn't put me in a position of disbelief that I think there's nothing I can do, it's just evil out there. We, as the legislators, Madam Speaker, can do something about it. We were elected to do something about it. We are the 39 individuals that represent over 300,000 citizens of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas that were given the opportunity to fight for their constituents and protect their constituents, Madam Speaker. I know that the House has heard how our member for Cat Island as Prime Minister has joined, I believe, in a lawsuit with bodies from Mexico, if not the Mexican government, against the United States, to try and stem the exportation of illegal firearms, particularly the ones that end up in our country. Madam Speaker, a memorandum of understanding. Madam Speaker, that's information on how we're going to stop the guns or slow down the guns that come into our country. But, Madam Speaker, what are we doing about the guns that are in our country now? It's well known in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas that people hold guns for rent. This is an illegal trade, Madam Speaker. This is an illegal trade, Madam Speaker. I'm not sure who's heckling in the background there, but I'm going to send something your way if you don't ease up. Your people don't have power in North Andros right now. Giggle about that. Okay? So, Madam Speaker, we know that there are persons in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas that rent guns. Some of these individuals are known to police. If they're not known to police, they should be known to police. Those individuals can have their properties searched, Madam Speaker. Those individuals can have properties that they're affiliated with searched, Madam Speaker. We have to do something to stop the amount of gun crime on our streets in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. 5 years is a long time. You know how old I'll be in 5 years, Madam Speaker? I'm going to be 49 years old, Madam Speaker. That's an old man, Madam Speaker. Okay? Yeah. I'll be an old man in 5 years, Madam Speaker. But no matter what age I am in 5 years' time, I know that 5 years, and my point is 5 years is a long time. If we are active in the House of Assembly, great social ills, Madam Speaker, can be tackled. Now, having made that point, I'm going to move on. Madam Speaker, I have approximately 18 minutes, 17 and a half minutes left. That is the time that I'm provided by the rules, and I'm going to ask that you protect me and ensure that if I need it, that time will be respected as mandatory. Madam Speaker, we're here before the House today on an amendment, a Notary's Public Amendment Bill. It's expected by me, Madam Speaker, anticipated through my discussions with the Leader of Government Business that toward the end of July, we will be adjourning for the Christmas break. Summer break, Madam Speaker. It's a long break, but it's still just for summer. But, Madam Speaker, today we're going to be debating the Notary's Public Amendment Bill. And while we're debating that, Madam Speaker, we're not moving forward the Magistrates Act Amendment Bill. We're not moving forward the Child Protection Act Amendment Bill. We're not moving forward an act to establish an independent body to manage the administration of the courts. We're not moving forward an act to repeal and replace the National Health Insurance Act. We're not moving forward an act to provide for the office of the Ombudsman. We're not moving forward with an act.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for West
Referring to what
Grabama.
we're moving forward with today. That's today. But if the member checks his calendar, we have at least 6 more sessions. So the member can't tell the governing side what we are proceeding with. But we're proceeding with that today, Notary's amendment today. All other matters will be dealt with at another time. We do set the agenda, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Madam Speaker, I find it quite fitting that the leader of government business would be sensitive to my comments. That is the point I'm making. Madam Speaker, we're not moving forward with an act to make greater provision for protection of consumers. Madam Speaker, we're not moving forward with an act to provide for the protection and support for victims of violence, to establish the protection against violence commission. And Madam Speaker, we're not moving forward with an act to regulate mineral prospecting, mining, and related matters. And we're not moving forward with an act to provide for a substantial economic presence and annual reporting of a commercial entity. Those are acts that are before us that we're not moving forward with today. And Madam Speaker, the bill that we're moving forward with today, in my opinion, is unjust to the common Bahamian. The common Bahamian, Madam Speaker, is not an attorney, is not a notary public. The common Bahamian, Madam Speaker, has no automatic path to exemption from paying vehicle license fees for a year or multiple years, or let's say, as provided under the Notary's Public Amendment Act, for 15 years from exemption on past registration fees for their vehicle. Persons that own vessels, fishing vessels, pleasure craft, water and jet ski operators, they are not being given a path to a 15-year waiver of their boat registration fees, Madam Speaker. If for whatever reason justified, every man has his own justification. But if for whatever reason they weren't in the pleasure craft, they weren't in the water, ski, motorboat business, they hadn't used their pleasure craft in a while, you know, we've just made regatta sloop sailing our national sport. Those tenders that are out on the course that play an instrumental role not only in the judging of those races, but also the support vessels, those by and large are not commercial vessels. Those are pleasure crafts, Madam Speaker. Are we giving a waiver of 15 years to those persons that may have had their vessels up? There's bound to be a number of persons, until this government brings the boat registration fees down for commercial fishing vessels and for pleasure vessels, that are not going to be registering their boat. Families that could enjoy our blue economy, the seas, the beaches, what the Bahamas is known for, the sun, sand, and sea, will no longer indulge in those pleasures. They say that the best way to enjoy a boat is to find a friend who has a boat. There's going to be far fewer friends, Madam Speaker, providing their boats to their family and loved ones to go out with them, because the costs and the rates to register vessels has gone up exponentially, that one, people are waiting to see when the government is going to amend it back down to a reasonable rate, and two, people are not going to be registering their vessels, not using the vessels. It's a crying shame, Madam Speaker, that this is the way we look upon our people. We tax them, throw fees on their backs, taking away the little bits of pleasure that they have in their life, being out on the sea, and give them no consideration or waiver, give them no reduction of their fees. But notaries, if you've worked in a prestigious government office as a notary, you can get exemption. If you're a member of Parliament, and there's at least 10 members of Parliament that are attorneys on the government side, Madam Speaker, and by my count, approximately 3, including one of our good senators on the opposition side, that are attorneys, all of us will have an automatic benefit of no longer having to pay a $250 fee. That was basically your fee to be a licensed attorney. The moment you're called to the bar, you're issued a notary certificate after you pay the fee. When you leave a government office, you're exempt while you're serving as a member of Parliament, either from this day going forward, or if you hadn't been paying for the last 10 years, some members of Parliament that are attorneys have been serving in the House of Assembly for over 15 years. They can, had they not been paying those notary fees, now write to the minister requesting an exemption of $250 over a 15-year period. That's some $3,750 by my calculation, Madam Speaker. If you're a practicing attorney, no matter where you're employed, and you're not accounting out of your earnings to put aside $250 to be licensed as a notary, to be licensed as an attorney, and you're happy that this exemption is being given to you, but you're not fighting for the exemption to be given to people that own vehicles, to people that own boats, to people that have to renew a business license, or persons that have to pay company fees. All of a sudden, that company now has some activity going on. It's just been a company that purchased the property and had the property held in its name. You haven't done anything with it, but now you need to get a good standing, maybe because you're selling the property. That company was not in business. It was merely a holding company. If you go for a certificate of good standing after buying a property 15 years ago, you have to pay the annual fee for every single year. If you're a common Bahamian and you own a company, you own property, you're paying a company fee for every single year, together with penalties, Madam Speaker, but not attorneys. If attorneys want to get back into the notary business, they can get 15 years free. Right off, Madam Speaker. Now, this isn't money that goes to an association or organization. This is money like your real property taxes. This is money like your business license fees. This is money like your vehicle license fees, your boat license fees, Madam Speaker, that all go in to the consolidated fund through the public treasury. A particular group of Bahamians, Madam Speaker, attorneys, who since the date they were called were asked to pay a notary license fee, are given something that the average Bahamian does not receive, but that the average Bahamian has to recognize as being a relief for a few when the burden on their back is being made heavier and heavier. Madam Speaker, I'm conflicted with this amendment because I will profit from it. If I no longer have to pay $250, Madam Speaker, for my notary license fee over the next 5 years, Madam Speaker, I'm going to save some money. So my pocket will be substantially bigger, Madam Speaker. But I'm not in this House to represent myself and my self-interests, Madam Speaker. So at the end of the day, what I'm going to be doing is abstaining from this piece of legislation because of my conflict, Madam Speaker. And I would invite my other fellow members of Parliament that are attorneys at law that will benefit directly from this legislation overall, other members of the public, consider doing consider doing the same. But, Madam Speaker, what's important to note is that this 15-year exemption doesn't just relate to persons that are serving in government offices, like the Attorney General's office. That's your prime public employer of attorneys in the Bahamas. It also relates to members of Parliament, as I've said. Now, we have this big question: what is a member of Parliament? Is a member of Parliament someone that serves in the House of Assembly, or does it also include the Senate? In my opinion, if you're part of Parliament in the Bahamas, you're a member of Parliament, and therefore this should apply to senators as it does persons elected in the lower chamber to the House of Assembly. So this assists, by way of an exemption, this assists persons working in the Attorney General's office. Mention was made of people coming out of retirement from the judiciary, but if you're retiring from judicial practice, are you not also retiring as being a notary? When your career comes to an end, Madam Speaker, that should be the end of your career, and you shouldn't need the Bahamian people to pay a bill for you or excuse you from a bill you otherwise had been responsible to pay. And Madam Speaker, another exemption, Madam Speaker, is that the language says that if you are in the employ, a counsel and attorney in the employ of a duly registered nonprofit organization. So, Madam Speaker, that's very wide. That's very wide in my opinion. Nonprofit organizations are, as of the last 2 years, going through a registration process. I can consult applicant, provide them the forms, collect the information, submit it. Maybe it takes me 2 hours. I receive a fee. I could even do it pro bono based on an arrangement, but I'm employed by them. And I can then, Madam Speaker, submit to the minister, who's the Attorney General, for an exemption of my notary public fees. There could be numerous attorneys that are rendering service to nonprofit organizations, Madam Speaker. It's unnecessary, in my opinion, and I've not heard a justification to date that would make this a priority, not only above the legislation that's pending on our agenda, but that would make this a priority over company fees, over business license fees, over boat registration fees, over vehicle registration fees, the fees that impact every single Bahamian. Should not every single Bahamian be treated the same way as a special class of Bahamian? All for one, Madam Speaker, and one for all, in my opinion. Madam Speaker, the government thinks that much is being achieved with this amendment. There's definitely a change that's being made. I, however, Madam Speaker, don't think now is the time to be doing that, considering the headlines in our papers today. There are far pressing priorities still outstanding. They were as pressing when this government came in to where it is approximately 2 years into its term. They're still outstanding, Madam Speaker, in need of being addressed. Madam Speaker, I thank you very much for allowing me this time today, and I thank those members of the public that are here. It looks like a young group, possibly working summer jobs with the Public Service Administration, and I congratulate them on being placed where they are. And I want you all to understand and know that the opportunities you see that we are participating in now are definitely your opportunities. So keep your head down, keep working hard. Active days, as I say, lead to accomplished lives. Thank you, Madam Speaker.